I got a call like after a few days. Hello, Shraddha, where are you? I said, my sister is driving. I was in Mumbai that time. So he said, okay, are you ready to hear a news? And I said, yes, tell me. Then he said, oh, Mr. Tata really liked you and he wants to invest in your story. And I was like, stop the car.
This video is an MBA masterclass on making, media company. How did you raise money from Ratan Tata?
Very simple. So I said, Mr. Tata, you've gone on record to say this, that it still hurts me that in this country where you come from, still determines how far you can go, right? And I want an equal India where everyone has an equal opportunity. And I said, Mr. Tata, I have lived that for the last 8 years, every single day, where every story should be important. And you have to support me, invest, and support all the entrepreneurs and stories. And he was like, because I was like this, like you have to, like there's no option not to.
Hey everybody, welcome to yet another episode of OnePlus Open Conversations. Today we're going to be talking to Shradha Sharma. Shradha has been an inspiration of mine because she's been in media for such a long time, especially in startup media, one of the first known startup media companies in India that covered startups. It was the first place I was ever covered and therefore is very special to my heart. But today is going to be a media masterclass. You are going to learn everything from how do you build a media company, how much money do you need? Exactly, to the last rupee, how much money you need. How much money can sponsors pay you? How do you monetize media? Whether it's directly through ads or events or subscriptions. Which are the right ways, which are the wrong ways? Plus, we're also going to learn about predictions for the future, media's thoughts on content creators, and all of that wonderful stuff, all in today's episode. So stay tuned till the very ending because this is an episode I wouldn't miss. So you shouldn't either. Shraddha, I want to start off with a very simple question. How did you get here? Like, what's your story so far? Like, what's your story?
What is my story? Honestly, I keep thinking about what is my story. And maybe I'm not generalizing it, but my story is the story of a very middle class India. I've talked about a lot that I grew up in Bihar in a time when it was politically very, very non-stable, not safe. And I grew up in a family of 4 daughters. So somewhere that really shaped me. I had to work hard. I had to prove that, and that time, dowry, if you were born as a girl child, then dowry is like people think, oh my God, liability. And I was told that when I was born, then everyone in my family cried, my distant relatives, ki teesri beti ho gayi hai. So somewhere that sense was there that I have to do something and I don't have to be a liability. So maybe my story, the ghost behind me has been that liability nahi manna, independent, and somewhere, and I say Bihar because when you're a Bihari, you talk in a certain way. In Hindi, हम कहते हैं हम आ रहे हैं, मैं नहीं, मतलब, so there's a sing-song way, a Bihari way, which I'm sure many of your viewers would understand what I'm saying. So I was always ridiculed also about that. And all these things shaped me in the way that one started your story. Somewhere for me, it was very important that where you come from, who you are, किस family में हुए हैं, कहाँ से आए, should not determine the story because we are all special. And I think if I was treated very specially, then this would not have happened. And that shaped, I feel that's primarily my story.
Do you feel that can be generalized? That today, I noticed this a lot, right? And I'm afraid to say it in public, but I'll say it anyway. Do you feel like a little bit of that strife in your early years, a little bit of that struggle is important for success? Because I see a lot of people who are coddled today by their parents and all, right? Like we are a little bit, the next generation is a little bit spoiled. Do you feel like at least from your perspective, struggle was necessary to get to where you were?
Yeah, absolutely. Varun, maybe it's my bias, but I have a huge enchantment with pain. In life, you have to experience pain. You have to experience disappointment, rejection, humiliation. All those things are the best. Sounds cliched, but they are actually the best teachers. Because if you're treated very nicely, I don't know how will you grow. Because if you look at this whole, butterfly or whatever, सब कुछ तो pain से ही निकलता है. Anything remarkable, there has to be pain. And if there is no pain, then how are you? I get attracted to people who have struggled and who have come up on their own. And that's why I love startups.
Yeah. Was that the origin story behind your story? Like, how did that happen? Like, I know you were at CNBC for a while.
How did the CNBC thing happen?
Like I told you, that Bihari never left me, and I went to media, and somewhere I thought in media, people celebrate success. All of us celebrate success, and we all want to learn from success, watch success. Tabhi to lifestyle of the rich and famous and all those things. There's an aspirational value. We are an aspirational country, but somewhere I just and I used to really meet a lot of people, and they all had a story. And one day I remember very clearly, an entrepreneur called me, very successful, big name, but not relatively big name in the scheme of things for a prime time. And he told me, and like he called me and he said, "Oh, who do you think you are? You're in CNBC and this and that." And mujhe wo slot nahi mila. He had an IPO, and a bigger IPO had happened, and he had tears. And to me, that was a very, very big surprise, because he's one of the most confident people. You'll meet him and you'll be like, wow, and I don't want to name him. And for him, his story was so personal. His venture was so personal. It was uski tapasya thi, uska journey tha. And that made me realize that for everyone, for all of us, our story is so important. And we need that voice. We need to tell our stories. And somewhere, I started going to IIT Bombay. I used to meet people, young people. I always, I think that if you have to be relevant, then you need to keep talking to very, very young people. And startups was a word that I heard in 2008, and they wanted to tell their stories. And when I asked that, let's do these stories at scale, that time it couldn't happen. So I started YourStory.
So, CNBC to YourStory, you've told us that it was this one, story that really triggered it. But what's the big shift in YourStory going from like a small company, from just somebody writing stories about from a blog, to the juggernaut that it became when I became 20 years old? That was a big shift for you.
Thank you for saying that.
and I think why I felt it was a juggernaut, right? Because every story I'd consumed about startups, everything that I was learning, everything about Zomato, this, that, it felt like you weren't settling, right? You were like in this never settle attitude where you're like, I want to cover every single founder, every single new founder who's raised money. And I was like, that is something I can learn from. So I want to know from your perspective, what is the shift? How did you go from like just a blog to now relevant?
Thank you, Varun. You're being kind. Like in my mind, I think that we are very, very, very small, and we've done 1.5 lakh stories so far.
That's not small.
But I just think that they are, like, if you ask me in my mind, and I can tell you since 15 years, if you'll see me 15 years back, I spoke the same thing. I have spoken the same thing for 15 years, that India is a country of over 1 billion people and stories need to be told. And in my mind, everyone told me it's a blog, it will not work, don't do it, it's an NGO, you shouldn't do it. And somewhere the more I heard, no, this shouldn't. Some of the VCs I knew that time, because I was working in CNBC, and I called, बोले ये business है ही नहीं, ये तो मतलब लिख रही हो, you could do it in WordPress and Blogger, write it over there, it's your fancy, it's your hobby, do it, because this is not going to work. This is and you will get bored, and there's no story here. And startups, what is that? And see, I'm talking about 2008. This is long time back, because today people will say, okay, what? But 2008 was a very different context. And the more I heard that this is an NGO, this will not work. So somewhere for me, it was not a media company or anything. It was like somewhere my pain or my need for validation and being
करके दिखाना,
हाँ करेंगे, और सबकी स्टोरी जिसको irrelevant कह रहे हैं, uncool, unsexy, these stories will not work. Why? And someone had told me this is BNI category, and I was like, what is BNI? So भूखा नंगा India category, इससे पैसा भी नहीं बनेगा, advertising भी नहीं होगा. So everything was नहीं होगा. कोई एक दिन अगर कह देता ना कि होगा, so maybe I wouldn't have. Yeah. And in my mind, it was always very big. It is a delusional. I always think, like, today also, if you ask me, I just think that I wish I had a lot of money, because your story should be in every town, village and city to tell everyone's story. Because it's not like, we all feel good, no? Like we all need that encouragement. I don't see it as media. I see it as an encouraging platform. It should just encourage everyone who's trying to do something. So yeah, somewhere so if I had to tell people who are in unsexy, uncool, non-scalable, NGO sort of category, is that it's all in the mind. Yeah. Like you have to think it's big.
And you think your big shift was the fact that you thought it was very big, but the reality of what people were telling you was very different. So it became about, I've got to prove everybody wrong. And therefore that started resulting in you putting effort into your story and that growing. Do you feel that you can attribute, because I'm trying to find, I know life is a series of, a lot of random things, right? I'm trying to find one instance that really powered you through.
There are 2-3 very simple things, yeah, Varun, that kept me going. I remember I had written about an entrepreneur who was an army guy and he left and he had started something. And he cried that like this means so much to me. And for me, every day, imagine what I was doing, writing 5-10 stories of entrepreneurs, of people doing something. 10 लोग तो कह रहे हैं ना कि बहुत सही है, मेरा दिन अच्छा गया, मेरे फैमिली में दिखाने के लिए कुछ हुआ, मेरा validation हुआ. Every day, if you're getting that kind of a high, then that is a
You
big
get
thing.
dopamine from the fact that your supporters, even though the minority at that point, was just vocal about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the second thing was, I think somewhere my business context, because I was working before and it didn't jump into it, was that I remember first Sun Microsystems used to be there, which got sold to Oracle. And I remember this very clearly, 2008 end, Bakshish Tata used to be there and they said, oh, we need startups in our program. And that gave me that, acha, theek hai. I still remember the deal. He said 25,000 rupees. I said, no, give me, and if you can get me 100 startups. And I said, I'll get you 200, you give me 1,00,000 rupees. And enrolled for the program because it was a free program. Then I thought somewhere ki paisa shayad ban sakta. It has been just experiment. Experiment based on that stories have to be told. Ab uske liye jo karna hai. But yeah, big moment if you ask me, getting investment. Like, unfortunately.
This is the Ratan Tata investment?
Yes, along
How
with.
did that happen?
The
I know
very-
Ratan at that point was not a fan of media.
Oh, yeah. In fact, he told me that media and I don't get along.
So
and
how did
I-
you get the meeting with Ratan? If I'm a young girl, let's say 21 years old, I want to get into media and I need to raise money, right? And I want to meet somebody like Ratan Tata. What do I need to have? Like how many views do I need to have? How do I get an intro with him?
This is the question which I think you should cut this into a module because I have got thousands of people reaching out to say, can you connect me to Mr. Tata?
This video is an MBA masterclass on making, a media company. How did you raise money from Ratan Tata?
So
Step by step, huh?
very simple. So I had got money, got money from Kalari Capital, Vani Kola. So she had all her companies present to Mr. Tata. And I still remember it was 2015 and he had flown himself from Mumbai and come to Bangalore. And I know that I was seeing that companies were presenting, they all had slides and decks and, market kya hai, sizing and all those words which are very, very important, right? TAM kitna hai, revenue kya hoga, and it was proper presentation. And I noticed that while he was listening to everyone, he was dozing off because he was tired and he's old. So then I asked that, Mr. Tata, would you like a cup of tea or coffee? And he said, yes, please. But I knew also that my time I was not, YourStory aisa thodi hai number one company hai ya jo bhi. All the important, more funded companies were presenting. I was last in the line and I didn't even have a presentation, to be honest. Then it was like, okay, the meeting is over. But Varun, a night before that, I had not slept. And the law of attraction secret book, I had said, Mr. Tata has invested in my company. And I swear, I'm going on record to say, whole night I said, excitement se hi nahi aaya. Pure raat, Mr. Tata has invested in my company. I swear on God, I did that. And I was like, oh, my meeting is not going to happen. And I was like, no, still in that crazy moment, it is going to happen. It is. So then when I had given tea to him, Vani said, oh, Shraddha, she runs YourStory. Then he asked me out of politeness or whatever. So I said, Mr. Tata, you have to give me 1 minute because it was ending the meeting and my meeting was not happening. So I said, Mr. Tata, you have said this, that it still hurts me, and you've gone on record to say this, that it still hurts me that in this country where you come from or what where you are from still determines how far you can go, right? Like if you're from a rich family or whatever. And I want an equal India where everyone has an equal opportunity. And I said, Mr. Tata, I have lived that for the last 8 years, every single day, where every story should be important. And you have to support me, invest, and support all the entrepreneurs and stories. And he was like, because I was like this, like you have to, like there's no option not to. Then he smiled and then he was like, then he said, so he said, media and I don't get along. I said, Mr. Tata, you and I will get along because the vision is this. And he started laughing. And then I heard from his team that, he will put in money. And somewhere, that's what I'm saying, that, somewhere the honesty, मतलब ये बहुत old school लगता है, मगर विश्वास, confidence, and just the purity, you can't, like, sorry to say the word, but you can't bullshit your way into doing these kind of things. Yeah. You have to have, जब दिल है ना तो हो जाता है. And I was like thinking that day, I said, okay, the law of attraction really, really works. I got a call, like after a few days. Hello, Shraddha, where are you? I said, my sister is driving. I was in Mumbai that time for a meeting. I'm on the road. So he said, okay, are you ready to hear a news? And I said, yes, tell me. Then he said, oh, Mr. Tata really liked you and he wants to invest in your story. And I was like, oh, I told my sister, like, stop the car. And it was I said, listen, very, very thankful. And I think also the purpose, maybe he related also to the purpose to support. And I remember that day I was so emotional. I called my father because I hadn't spoken to him after my mother's death for many, many years. And I told him, Papa, that's the joke all of you should hear, is that I called him and this was very emotional. I thought this is a moment for me to call because Tata naam to Bihar mein sab koi suna hua hai. Matlab India mein sab koi suna hua hai. And I called him and I said, Papa, Mr. Tata, Ratan Tata is investing in your story. Then he says, And then he, of course.
That's a sign of validation from Indian dad.
Yeah. But again, the Indian dad, he says, But what's the big deal? He has invested. I read in the newspaper, he's investing in every company. He's invested in this. तो चाहिए ये मेरा बाप. मैंने कहा, okay. But then he said, okay, good. But, so to answer your question, it's not sometimes, I think mostly it is preparation, every day doing the same work, manifesting, I believe
getting
in.
lucky in between.
And listen, lucky.
Like 5 people would have said no.
Oh, listen, everyone said no.
Yeah.
But I also have to call out, I have more investors. I have Vani Kola, Kalari Capital. She's been phenomenal. 314, Qualcomm Ventures, and UC Berkeley Endowment Fund, which is R&T and UC Berkeley had tied up. So Mr. Tata, the fund, the collaboration also invested in the company.
But Shraddha, if you were starting like a media company today, right, now everything's changed. When you started, I think we had maybe a handful of media companies, serious ones. Today, it seems like, everyone has a YouTube channel, everyone has this. It feels like a crazy world now. If you were giving advice to an 18, 19-year-old to start a media company today, because this podcast, by the way, everything that I'm doing here is about the future. It's like, I try to do 1 or 2 questions about the past, and I'm like, okay, if you were to rebuild it, but 2024 and beyond, how would that look? How would that work? So I'd love to know from you, what would you do differently today? Like, AI is there. It seems a little bit scary. I know you have, your perspective on journalism has changed over the last decade. Fire away.
First, I would tell an 18, 19-year-old, think 10 times before starting a media company. Because media company is, all businesses, starting up anything is very hard. In India, it becomes doubly hard. But media company, because for India, because if you're starting today, and I think in last 15 years relatively it is becoming better and better, because if you look at people who've created categories, companies that have created categories in this space, you need money. We don't come from a social security background, and while we hear, there's ample of capital for good entrepreneurs and all that, I think mostly entrepreneurs
how much
are good.
Money though? If you're starting a media company today, what's the minimum amount of capital you'd raise? I
would say that today, because it's not media, but it's also the distribution. And today it's increasingly hard. When I started in 2008, thoda dimag tha. Nahi shuru karti main. If there was anyone who was covering startup in 2008, startup as a word, if you searched on Google, was not there when it came to Indian media at all. So then for me, it was that audience, that target, that community was very distinct.
You found something that nobody else was tackling, and you said this is a gap.
Yes.
And you went after it.
Yes.
But let's say I found a gap today. I'm talking about, let's say an 18, 19-year-old kid found a gap today.
But Varun, today I just also want to call out, finding a gap today increasingly is much harder.
Much harder.
Like ekdam new territory finding is much harder. Like, I know everyone is a YouTuber today. Everyone is a podcaster today. Everyone is covering every possible category. It's imploded in a way. So that's why to build a brand, and इसलिए पैसा चाहिए आज, क्योंकि to stand out in the crowd you will need consistency. To do a shoot you will need consistency. People demand a certain sort of a production quality. The experience which an audience today expects or a viewer expects is also different.
So give me a specific number. 50 lakhs, 75 lakhs, a crore. Just do some rough math.
See, I'm a very bootstrap mentality person, so I would say 50 lakh से 1 करोड़ में at least you have Shri Ganesh हो जाएगा. Zero, you'll be able to launch something.
And you think, obviously for people who come from wealthy backgrounds, that should not be hard to raise from friends and family. But otherwise, if you come from a tier 2, tier 3 background, this would be something you'd raise venture capital for or angel investment for?
Angel investment.
And what kind of angel investors would you look for?
I would say people who've been in this space, people who understand from media or ancillary. Because today media also, what do we mean by media? Media could mean today even a gaming company. Anyone who has a distribution, right? Anyone who has some sort of a content. Today I would say so many VCs are today media company. Name a category, everyone is a media company. And I think media has become like I don't know a category where media is not a play today.
And if you don't build a media arm, you die.
Yeah. You have to be talking. You have to, there's so much of cacophony of everyone talking something or the other. You have to stand out. So today, breaking from that noise and establishing yourself is much harder than it was 15 years back.
Got it. So let me summarize the steps so far. Find a gap, raise 50 lakhs to a crore. What's the next step? Who do you hire?
One, of course, if you can find co-founders who believe and who can come with no cost on equity, then get them.
How do you find them? In media especially. Do you go to journalists who you think can graduate to co-founder level, or do you find people completely outside of journalism?
I think, that question I would say would be second question. The first question would be of someone who's interested. Because to me, imaginative people who with execution skills, and they could be across. Today, see people who are doing some great content and distribution are not necessarily, they would be finance professionals. And today we're living in that world. You could be a great chef. You could be a great skin doctor with a very nice beauty distribution or a beauty, this thing. So find someone who is interested in the space and the sort of media that you're creating, someone who comes. But I am, of course, saying that there is an advantage to having certain sort of experience and understanding of the space that you're entering in. Because this is such a fluid space today. Like media, I every day think about it, aaj media hai kya? Because it's getting so disintermediated, right? Earlier when I grew up, I had NDTV, right? English agar seekhna hai, to NDTV dekho. You read Times of India. The print and TV by far were the definition of media. And there were certain anchors, and then there were certain reporters whom you read and you watched. And it was one way of distribution. वो है और limited था distribution. आज के date में, if I am today interested in finance content or any stock market, I can search and there might be some YouTuber who will give me far better input than a media company, right? So that to me is an interesting thing, and that's why to start in this space would require a lot of thinking in terms of target क्या है, audience क्या है, content क्या होगा, play क्या है, distribution क्या होगा, expertise क्या होगा, what you're bringing to it. And today more often than not, relationship and network क्या होगा. All those things become very, very important if you're starting a media company.
Okay, let's say you found a co-founder. Let's say you found your best friend, like this girl, 20 years old, sitting, in Aurangabad, has found a co-founder, and they found a gap, and they've raised 50 lakhs to a crore. What's the next step?
Then you have to produce the content. And the biggest thing I would say, the only, to me, and again, it's my bias, the only and the biggest thing you require in this business is stamina. Right? Stamina is very important, and consistency. So you have to, for me, when I started YourStory, I used to write every day.
You used to write?
Yeah. 2008, 9, 10.
How much would you write?
5-10 stories a day.
You read 5 stories.
Yeah,
there.
but I'm not a writer. Neither. अभी तो मैं बहुत खुश हूँ कि AI or generative AI, and we should talk about that, is how that is disrupting. For me, it was like meet someone, I love you, I like you, I see your honesty. चलो लिखते हैं तुम्हारे बारे में, वो भी खुश, मैं भी खुश, और चलो, because it's about encouragement, right? So 5, 10, and I wouldn't sleep, right, every day. And I had someone in Jabalpur who I used to give him 3,000 to begin with, and he used to upload it. And I remember the site used to be Joomla software, but every day, Sunday, Saturday, Sunday, consistency. So जो brand बनता है, वो every day you have to do that. So I would say that if you find someone and then start having that stamina to start writing every day, because it takes time to, there's this amazing analogy I believe in, that it takes drop to one day become an ocean.
The last piece of this, how do you make money of this? How are you monetizing? What are your unit economics, and what should these people learn from it?
I also think about it. ये तो सबसे कठिन सवाल है. Let me just say it's the toughest journey. Sometimes I think that the VCs and the people and the experts who had told me that you should have done an NGO, then I should have listened to them. Because it is tough to make money in media. Monetizing, let's be clear, as of now, I think media businesses across, not just in India, across the world, and more so in India because of the pricing and everything, is very, very hard, very tough. And that's why somewhere you have to build the hustle thing of how do you innovate on the revenue. So there are 2-3 things which YourStory did. And I think I feel proud about that, because we run a profitable company. We've run like 8 years, I bootstrapped, and it was profitable. And yes, when I raised money for a couple of years, it was not. Again, it was profitable. But last year, I have to say, we are not profitable. Hopefully this year again, we will be. So is that we said that, to me, every user, we started positioning our audience very differently. And these are entrepreneurs, these are business owners, these are people who'll grow. And then we started talking to only people who would be interested in talking to this community.
And how would you talk to them? Would you email them first? Would you meet them at events?
I would meet them at events, like be ghost and just find where they are and be where they are. In fact, and then those are things that we don't talk. These are very practical things. You have to go meet and sell yourself, because they're not going to be coming to you. Emails, they will get a lot and they'll not be responding to you. So you have to tap into your network and start meeting them. So initially one meets them, then you have to deliver, you have to perform, and then they start giving you more money. But I would say we are more of a B2B when it comes to the revenue part of it, is that it was, doing certain sort of an understanding. I remember one company was entering India in the cloud space. Then how many startups are using cloud? What is their spend? Giving that kind of a research, doing roundtables, doing research papers, doing branded content series or educational series on certain topics. So that's where we started initially making money. Then of course events, TechSparks. Now it's 14 years. Very early on, TechSparks became a property where people were coming, because I think I would still say, I feel proud about TechSparks because
wonderful events. Actually, I feel of all the media events in India, TechSparks is the best.
I also can say that. I'm very critical, Varun, about everything that we do, but I just think that TechSparks somewhere is good.
Yeah, I'm telling you as an audience member, unaffiliated,
Thank you.
That is pretty good, right? But today, I'm sure the sponsors pay a lot of money. But let's say when you did the first TechSparks, which was so many years ago.
I still remember it very clearly. It was in 2010, and the money we made was 5 lakh rupees.
Interesting. From your title sponsor.
Yeah. Microsoft was the sponsor, and Canaan Partners, a VC fund, was sponsored, and Mumbai Angels had given a little bit of money. So I clearly remember all 3 of them.
And how does it happen? How many meetings does it take for you to get 5 lakhs from them?
So Canaan Partners, I had a friend. So I pushed him and asked him. And of course, so that's what you have to hustle your way. Microsoft, I still remember the person there was Girish Joshi. I had to do a lot of meetings, but they used to run a program called Microsoft BizSpark, and they wanted to get on board a lot of startups. So it was very, very targeted and relevant for them. So they also supported it.
Interesting. And what do you think about subscriptions? I've been seeing a lot of media companies go the subscription route now. And I've seen large media companies really bet the company on it. I'm not a big believer, personally, right? Because, I've seen I do know there is some evidence in favor. I know in the US, there's some companies that are doing subscription well, some media companies. In India, though, I just feel like my behavior is like I don't pay for subscriptions too much, even if it's good quality content. But I'd love to know your thoughts on it.
We don't pay for software, what we were discussing. We don't like to pay. We'll pay for a movie maybe to go to a cinema hall. We'll pay for...
One time is fine.
Yeah. We'll pay for a rock concert show, or we'll pay for... We do pay. We have the paying power, but we don't pay for content. And especially if it is not... if it is content like we do in Your Story, which is not sensational. We have over-anchored on positive, standing with people who want to...
I have a question there. So you're saying overtly sensational content drives subscription?
Listen, I have a very strong view that nothing drives subscription. But maybe you would have a certain set of audience who will be intelligent people with a certain worldview. So maybe you'll find your tribe. So maybe there will be a certain... At scale, subscription in India still has to be proven. I also have to say this on record. We have a subscription platform called Captable, where we have some very fantastic journalists. They write content, one story a day. But that's a part of the overall. If I start betting on it, then that would not be it, because I somehow, personally, if you ask me, I'm not a fan of subscription. I feel good content should be available, and there should be people who subsidize for it or pay for it.
You think in a decade this might change?
In a targeted way, yes. For example, if I am very, very interested in learning about, for example, I'm very interested in learning about valuations or fundraising or certain, or something about fintech or something about, it could be any subject. Then having some very specialized content and paying, like Substack, right, in US, where people started newsletters and they had subscribers. Now, I don't know how much it has scaled or not scaled, but audience was paying for it. And generally, we look at US for all these things. So I think in India, maybe for certain sort of content, there would be a certain set of people who'll pay. But if you're thinking of a very scalable...
You're thinking like 100 million and 10 million subscriptions. No one's proven that.
No. YouTube भी तो इतनी बार ये ad देता है ना, subscribe to YouTube Premium. We are all hooked on to YouTube. But I wonder what's the number.
Yeah. So I want to show you something, okay? This is a very interesting piece of content. It steps up to what you just told me. Let me just open this. I did a reel recently. I've been doing lots of reels like this.
Disney just unveiled this robot that's got an actual personality. Unlike what Boston Dynamics or Tesla produces, this one seems like people are more likely to interact with it. Sort of like...
None of that is real. It's all generative AI. So we've managed to fine-tune a model to do text that it sort of writes like me. It's not perfect yet. We use a tool called HeyGen to do the video, and audio. We have our own stack to kind of clone our audio. I feel we're getting to the point where generative AI can be used to write a bunch of content, especially the less investigative journalism you need to do to get a piece of content, the more likely it is to be disrupted by AI. I know that you're doing some Gen AI stuff. I'd love to know what it is and how you think the future, because this is all about the future, this podcast especially, right? How's it going to play out, in your opinion?
One is that one has to be very open, because I just think that this space is only going to keep getting disrupted. It has, I would say, with the creators, with the YouTubes, with the podcasts, with the internet, so last 2-3 years and with COVID, like just see how this space is getting disrupted. The media space is getting disrupted. So many media companies, large media companies are now also struggling, right? So one, that it is going to get disrupted. Second is that I think generative AI, the biggest disruption in any space with AI would be in media space, in content space. And of course, with this kind of a content, if you're doing something informational or something which is like, where I can learn or pick or do, there I think there'll be a lot of influence of this. We also, in Your Story, we call it Nucleus AI. We are writing a lot of stories, like a lot of stories.
You have your own AI internally?
Yes. We have a team, in fact, very smart people from IIT Madras who are working, experimenting and doing some cool stuff. Because we also, as you said, one has to be relevant. And so one is working on that. But having said all that, I still feel that there is going to be in the new world, the good thing is, जैसे मुझे लगता है OTT से cinemas better हुए overall. So now even in a theater you start getting good movies with the regional cinemas coming, with the disruption that has happened with OTTs in some way. I have to give credit that a lot of people, and I love Manoj Vajpayee, people like that got a voice. They became more superstar than what we saw of these people pre-OTT world. So that disruption happened because of the platform. So the quality and the content became better. I think with generative AI, of course, there'll be a lot of disruption, a lot of mundane works, press release writing, जैसे मैंने कहा, informational content, it's सारे होंगे. But I also think that it's also going to be a great world because it will also lead to creative brains and to human imaginations to do different kinds of content. And I think that imagination realm of that, I still feel AI is what you feed into it, and they give that, right? So it's machine learning, the whatever you're feeding them, but the creative part of it, how you interact,
How you think of the narrative.
yes, that I think will get very specialized, and I hope we will all be pushed to do a better job, to create better content, to think of better stories.
How should a journalist think about this?
That's a very interesting question. I feel that the way we grew up with journalists and the way we have journalism and the world now, I think it's changing a lot because like I don't know, the definition of journalist is also changing, right? Like, who is a journalist?
I'm talking about somebody who's been through, there are schools for this, right? I've been through journalism school. I've done this for a few years. I've got a set process. I follow the process to the T. And now I see these bunch of YouTubers going out and, just saying whatever they want.
That's the world. So you have to adapt and you have to adjust and you have to live this world and you have to plan for this world and you have to prepare yourself for this world.
Yeah. And what do they think about AI? Like, in the sense, if AI is there and it's writing the simple stories, do you feel journalism should move more towards investigative journalism? Because digging out information is not something AI can do yet.
I think the AI is a great tool for journalists because now you can research and put some search and you can get all sort of information. Your research time reduces. So that also gives you time to imagine, to think, to reflect and to come up with stories which are very incisive. So not necessarily investigative. It could also be very, very, new perspective, new insight. Something that I have not heard, something that makes me think. And to do that, someone has to be thinking, like, some of the things which have remained eternal.
It's like that McDonald's narrative, right? McDonald's is not a food company, it's a real estate company. That's a perspective shift.
Yes.
And I know lots of Indian companies, when you talk to the founders, they're like, you're thinking about my company this way because the media has told you this, but actually I'm thinking about my company this way. And for me, those are very insightful. I feel like journalism move to that, but that requires you speaking to the founders.
Yes. And the other thing I also feel is that, like for my company, myself, I just never thought of YourStory as a media company. In fact, to be honest with you, Varun, I always thought that the labeling was very siloing YourStory to media. Because how do you say that we are a media company? I always thought that, I wanted to create a new word and hopefully one day I will, is that it's a community platform. If, like to me, if I had to look at my last 15 years of journey, I said we've played a very crucial role in ecosystem building. Like we started talking about startups in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, blah. It imploded after 12, 13, 14 or whatever, 15, 16, whatever. So but it was more about talking about people. And that, was it a media play or was it an ecosystem play? Or was it an ecosystem platform, community play, right? So the definition also of media, the definition of journalists.
And if you make a lot of the money from events, then technically media is just one of the things you do. You saw one shift, okay? You saw the shift of audience behavior from desktops, because I remember when that story came out about us, I was using it on the desktop.
Me too.
Then it moved to mobile phones. Then you probably saw a little bit of tablets in. And now you have these, foldables that are all over the place. So, and for me personally, it's like 7:5 ratio. I like reading from this. And now you have VR, AR, like newer platforms. It feels like audience behavior has changed. Formats is one thing, and I'm sure you're adapting how over time to those formats. But what are other audience shifts you've seen? Like, what is something that for sure audience behavior has changed over the last decade in this, and it's like you're definitive about it?
Many things. With due humility, attention span has completely gone. Like today, like Everyone who grew up with this desktop era moved to the mobile era.
Yeah, in the desktop era, we had more attention.
Yeah, of course, you could read a story, or you could like, at least कम से कम 5 मिनट था, 10 मिनट था.
You know, I have a theory around this. It's a wild theory. It could be wrong, but I'll tell you anyway. I think the amount of attention you can pay to something is directly proportional to the screen size. It's weird. I have a very, very large monitor. I have multiple monitors at home. So the largest one, if I'm reading something or I'm watching something, I pay far more attention. If I'm on this, just because the screen size is much larger, I pay more attention. I had a small phone before this, okay? Really tiny phone before this. And there, I'd only just watch shorts. So I understand platforms are also changing. Like YouTube is also saying I'll do short video and all that. But I feel it's somewhere to do with the real estate.
I never thought about it, but it could be that. Today, I just think that, to answer your question in terms of media and content creation, today I see all the investors as content creators. I see entrepreneurs as founders as content creators. I see media companies as content creators. So who is not creating content? And when you have so many people talking about, for example, fundraising karna hai. Everyone is talking about fundraising, how to stay motivated. Everyone is talking about how to stay motivated. Then you keep on saying, then you need motivation by not watching sometimes any of this.
So you see, supply-demand change is causing audience attention spans to reduce. That's a definitive behavior change you've seen. So does that reflect in the stories you write?
And yes, and it also should reflect and must reflect in terms of, again, this is which it will require a lot of thinking and creativities in terms of 1 minute mein, 2 minute mein, 3 minute mein, how do you deliver? Like, you were also talking about this, right? Just before this, is that now in that short attention span, how do you hook the audience? How do you get them to listen to you? How do you get them to be loyal to you? Because, going back to the earlier question, if 20 or 18-year-old is starting a media company, today starting a media company, getting audience is all right. Maybe with that 50 lakh, 1 crore, 2 crores, you'll be able to do that. But then to get them to be hooked on to you, to be able to get them to come to you every day or maybe every week or every hour or whatever, that is where a lot of thinking will be required, because that behavior has changed.
Any other shift you see?
Facebook chala gaya. LinkedIn is where now I think
So you're saying you can't be loyal to any platforms?
it's increasingly becoming hard to be loyal to any platforms. I would say, if you're asking about audience. Second, I would say that the audience has become extremely more vocal and demanding.
They will tell you what they like and don't like.
They don't like, so they're not going to be submissive, or they're not going to just passively consume you. They're very actively consuming, and they have very active loop of giving feedback.
You feel that with companies, at least a media company like yours, when the audience says something bad, it affects you?
Oh my
about the
God.
company?
नहीं, मैं तो रो रो कर मर गई. मैं तो, everyone used to tell me, oh my God, like, oh, she's so emotional, oh, she's so sensitive, oh, she's not a good leader, oh, she's very emotional, because I would cry at the drop of the hat. I would get so disturbed, I wouldn't sleep. And it's not just media company. I think everyone goes through this process, and you have to go through this process. Again, coming back to pain, like sometimes you feel, oh my God, it's so unfair. Like, I always thought, Varun, मेरे दिमाग में ये था पहले, that there's a Hindi song, and you wouldn't have heard, all your audience wouldn't have heard. There's a very nice song saying, किसी ने भी तो ना देखा निगाह भर के मुझे, गया आज का भी शाम उदास करके मुझे. And I was like thinking that, you're loving all the entrepreneurs, telling everyone's story. Everyone will be like so happy and encouraging and supporting. But there was so much of negative criticism that, oh, this is a PR platform, this is a mouthpiece, this is like a paid platform, this is this, oh, she's dumb, they don't understand, they don't know the right journalism, they are not critical. So sometimes just being encouraging in this country has been the hardest job, because if you are encouraging, you're positive, then you are dumb. If you're critical, you are negative, or you're pulling.
Yeah, I see that in the comments all the time. There'll be one person in the comments who's just critical because he's like, I'll get likes of this, I'll get views of this. But I'll tell you one thing. I think with startups, it doesn't take a genius to say this is going to fail. It's obvious, right? Like, you raised 5 million, 99% of the time you're going to fail. The stats say this person is going to fail.
Yeah.
By definition, they're trying something insane. So when a media company says, look, these guys failed, I called it a year ago. That to me is the easy thing to do.
I feel, yeah.
It
Yes.
sounds smart, right? For you to poke holes in something that exists. Because it's like there'll be 10 people trying to do something, and obviously it's going to fail. I feel encouraging them is harder, and startups are so fragile. Like Sam Altman has this weird piece about co-working spaces. I don't know if you've ever read this. He says that don't go to a co-working space because if you have a crazy idea, and ideas like Snapchat were crazy ideas,
Yeah.
right? Like, oh, you'll send a picture and it'll disappear
Yeah,
in a minute. In a co-working space, other people will tell you, no, don't do this. They'll be like, it's a stupid idea. So you will change your mind about stupid ideas. So the best ideas that come out in isolation, or you just don't care about what people think in the early days.
Yes.
So I feel like even the smallest piece of encouragement from a media company is a big deal.
You know, I can hug you right now. And I genuinely love you for that because I agree to this. Like, you know, I left my job to do this. I could have easily had a salaried job and had a point of view because one of the easiest thing we all can have and we all are born, I think, with it is a point of view. हर चीज में हमारा point of view है. A negative point of view is the easiest point of view.
I'll tell you the saddest part of this. I have a young audience. They're like 18 to 24, right? Sometimes I speak to them and make it as an exercise, right? I'm like, I need to get feedback. And the kids nowadays say, नहीं मुझे startup नहीं करना है, मुझे difficult problem नहीं solve करना है because यार ये सब scam है, fraud है. VC पूरा fraud है. I'm like, no, where did you hear that? Like, see the news. That's the thing, no. If you say something nuanced, if you put out 5 pages about something, people will compress it to one line. And the entire sagas that have happened with some of the founders in the last few months, people have just come away thinking this entire industry is fraud. I hate that because now you discourage young, smart kids from trying hard problems.
Absolutely.
And failing,
Absolutely.
which is part of the game, right?
Writing or talking about someone else is a responsibility. And it's a responsibility to that business, company, entrepreneur, to so many more people because you are shaping opinions. You are influencing people to think in a certain way. Like EdTech, not whole EdTech industry is a fraud. EdTech today, you know, coming from Bihar, I am where I am because I got education. Because if I didn't get education with my background, with my family thing, I wouldn't reach anywhere. To me, I think the education is the biggest thing and there's still so many nooks and corners of the country जहाँ पे EdTech जो tech है अगर जा रहा है तो वो सही है. Now brushing the whole EdTech space and laughing about it is ridiculous. Things have become efficient, things have become faster, things have become better, but yes, can it create more impact? Can it do better? And are they bad actors in any industry, in any space? And again, I would not say bad actors. I would say with that sort of money flowing, there was irresponsibility in many places. But for that 5 people, like you're saying,
Can't shape the narrative based on those 5.
absolutely, absolutely. It's a
You're right.
responsibility.
People should take more responsibility for writing stories about other people.
Yes, and of course, highlight the truth. Like, but today for me, if you ask me, 15 years, I have also anchored on supporting the underdogs. क्योंकि 5 खराब हैं मगर बाकी सारे तो मेहनत कर रहे हैं, स्ट्रगल कर रहे हैं. And they're trying, and more often than not, if you meet young entrepreneurs, you know, they have such a junoon in them to make a difference. Yeah.
Okay, so I have another set of questions. It's a little controversial, but I think it's important for us to, get through this. Because I'm not a finance influencer, I'm a financial idiot. But I saw some of the finance influencers and some of the media companies. Did you see that narrative shape up? Did you see the entire thing happening?
Yeah, and also the rule that came, right?
So SEBI came in and they made a rule about finance influencers. I'm also a little uneducated about this, so I'll just give you a brief that, some of the finance influencers. So there are 2 kinds of finance influencers. My understanding of this. There is a stock tips person who will on a Telegram group charge 50 rupees and tell you buy this stock.
Yeah.
And then there's people like Financial Sharon, right? Who will just come do some comedy on YouTube and say, hey, this is how mutual funds work. I feel I saw a very interesting bait and switch happen where I understand one side definitely needs punishment. And SEBI went after that side pretty hard. But I feel I saw old media really come after, these new age finance influencers, and they went after the wrong kind of finance influencers. They went after the largest ones.
Yeah.
So I know all these large creators they went after have started doing the most basic. They've diluted themselves to the point of being a fortune cookie. But I know the media went after them when they should have went after the stock tips guys, and they put them both in the same bucket. My personal belief is I think media and content creators are in a way competitive. My understanding, right? So what is your understanding of this? Do you feel like old media is looking at content creators and thinking these are different? I know some people like you are saying, hey, it's all the same. But how do you think of this?
like, again, I would not say old media versus the content creators. Anyone who's disrupting will always create a certain sort of a negative sort, a negative backlash. I think, yes, financial products, because people are paying, there should be responsibility to it. But I don't know. I wouldn't like to comment. I just think that all of us need to be little open. And overall, like you're saying, right, the space has to grow. Content space needs to grow and have money and good content and many content creators. They can be in media, they can be on YouTube, they can be wherever.
So you see no difference between the two?
I don't see a difference, and we shouldn't see a difference, because at the end of the day, an 18-year-old or a 20 or a 40 or a 70-year-old wants to get authentic, real information, content and value for their time, whoever is providing them.
My viewpoint as well, right? I personally think if all the old media companies just started a YouTube channel and were serious about it, this is my personal, like, I truly believe this, and just did, obviously adapted it to the YouTube format a little bit, played a little more short form, I think they would actually win, right? I think it's just, I'm surprised that
And they'll
people-
make sure that then in that way that people like us also win, because somewhere like,
they carry the brand, and brands already know that, okay, this I pay an influencer, and then this this ad goes up.
platforms like mine, we are no man's land, because when it comes to, there have been regulations in this space also.
What do you mean?
Like, in the sense, like, for companies which had, if you have investment from outside the country and all that, then, you can't, like, and a certain portion and whatever. So print and TV has a lot of recognition in the country. And for digital media platforms, the definition itself is so fluid, so lucid, that it's like you can be an aggregator, you could write about politics. Even if you're not writing about politics, you are a digital media. Like, how are you a digital? Like, I just think that, if you're writing current affairs or politics or this, then you are this. So the definition is also so unclear still in my mind, because a gaming company, as I said, is also a media company. So for that matter, I would say a creator today is also a media company in itself, because if a creator is monetizing and talking about certain stuff, then they're also media company, or they're not a company. So what is the definition? I think that is getting completely shifted and changed, and I think that needs to evolve.
Yeah, and I saw, I've seen some of these channels, right? Some of the people who are old media, who are going new media. It's so simple. It's like, I feel like if I just spoke to them for an hour and just told them, you don't do thumbnails like that. Because the thing is, in old media, you build a reputation, at least in business, with being very serious. You can't translate super seriousness to YouTube. Even if you want to have serious content, the packaging needs to be fun. So I feel like some of those, if they fix, I really, truly think old media, because they also come with the brand.
I really want, now talking to you, one idea came to my mind, is that why, I don't know if I'm sure there would be, but I'd love to create a forum of, like, a body, like an industry body, or a industry body again is an old word, but sort of a group of creators, new media and old media together, which represents overall who are invested in the space growing and not looking at their own boundaries, because this is such a space where people are just competing with each other and there's no genuine collaboration.
And I also feel like old media doesn't understand that, see, having a brand, like, say, being called something, YourStory or whatever, means, sure, you might not have that crazy acceleration that you'd have having a name, right? Let's say Rahul or whoever on YouTube. But also, you have longevity. You've been around for 15 years. I know lots of old media companies who've been around 10, 15 years. In the YouTube space, average lifespan is 3 years. People say 7. I don't believe that. I think it's 3 to 4 years. And after, there's, maybe you can name them like 2-3 people who, like people like Tanmay, who've really been relevant more than that. But I think people forget that. Sure, they make more money in the short term, but it's just the end of their career after that. Then they'll have to go back and it's almost like they have to restart their life from scratch. And I've seen so many of these creators after the 3-4 year cycle, because now I've hit 30, right? I've seen people who have now done this for 4-5 years, become irrelevant, and have got hooked onto drugs, or who are just like, who are trying, but it's not working. You know what a loss of identity that is?
Yeah.
Because your name was associated with it. The company, it's fine. I mean, it's still hard, but fine. The company shut down, you can move on to the next thing. But when your name's gone to like 0 views, it's really taxing. Like, the other side is very bad. So I feel they could use with a little bit of guidance from old media, where old media tells them, fine, this is fine, build a brand. right? And I feel like old media could learn from new media, where new media is like package it differently. That should be collaborative rather than competitive. And I'm so surprised it's competitive.
Yeah, I'm surprised and I'm also disappointed because somewhere I just feel that I have really seen that you grow much faster if you collaborate and genuinely collaborate. But somewhere people like me had to do it on our own because it was a complete write off from media companies. Like, I always wanted as a startup entrepreneur, I should be profiled. Like, I'm just saying to that level, right? I hit the check boss, the so called check boss, entrepreneur, woman entrepreneur, blah, blah, in a difficult space, is writing. I've never had an article in any media company about me, like a profiling of an entrepreneur. And that's interesting. And if I were this thing that as a media, I would support, say that, listen, she's managed to do and doesn't have a 50-year-old or 100-year-old legacy company. So that's very small example. Imagine creators today, like what you're talking about. Like people like us, all of us should be just
And
supporting.
I'll tell you, the math is so strange, okay? I'll tell you why. I know that the new creators, they're all young. They're like 24, 25. They would love to be featured in a Money Control or YourStory or wherever, right? For me, it was like a dream of mine to be featured in one of these. So I feel like with money, if I give you money, I lose some money. If I have 10 rupees and I give you 5 rupees, I lose 5 rupees. With influence, with reach, I don't lose anything. If I get you here and I have 100,000 people see it, I lose nothing. Right? And it's the same for media, old media. They lose nothing. In fact, if you write about a creator, you gain more. So I don't understand the competitiveness at all. It just feels like it makes perfect business sense for both sides. One person gets the influencer gets credibility, these people get reach. It feels like a match made in heaven. It's odd that egos have come in the way, or I don't know what it is that has come in the way, but I think that can be changed.
Yeah,
It requires somebody to make the body, like you said.
Yeah, it has to. It has to. And somewhere it will happen because it's also nascent. So people are all figuring out. And now with AI, everyone, the whole thing, what you're saying, being relevant for everyone is chasing relevancy, Like, just how do you remain relevant? How do you fend? Money is difficult in the space. So it also becomes far more complicated, right? Because everyone is figuring out the revenue, the pie, how much am I getting? Who is getting? Because for an old media, it would be a creator is taking away the money, which ideally they would have got. Or for a creator, then the challenge becomes that, like, you have to constantly perform, constantly keep producing as a one person rather than have a team. So
No, I agree. So Shraddha, let's do 2 hot takes, right? First thing is, what is the longevity secret of YourStory? You've been around for 15 years. Very few companies who've been around that long. What's the secret? If you were to say it in like 3 lines. I have a take on this. I think it's the events. I think it's the face-to-face and the relationships. Do you agree with that?
I would agree with that. Paranoia.
Paranoia?
Yeah. And constantly being written off. I think that is a big driver. Like, every day I wake up and I know people are expecting that this will shut down.
Isn't that a lot of anxiety? I've felt that because I've run companies, right? It's crazy, especially as your runway starts ticking away. Butterflies inside the stomach every day. But also forces you to do your best work.
Yeah.
Next, subscription models. I know, UPI is crazy, right? Like I Google Pay for everything.
Yeah, me too.
So I think subscriptions are going to be big, according to a lot of people, but you don't believe it to be true. What's the solution? What's the fix to this? I know you've spoken a little bit about it before, but I would like your thought anyway. If there was a hypothetical world where subscriptions worked, what is that world?
Tokenizing it to 5 rupees, 10 rupees, 15 rupees, 20 rupees, frictionless. Where, like, for example, I'll tell you what I pay for. I paid earlier for Grammarly because it's for India, they had a different pricing and you could pay. And so if one can create, like, if in my mind the friction to pay is not there and I'm getting something which is very high value, then it will work.
Hey, I have a thought. Have you thought about making TechSpark subscription?
What a lovely thought. You should just be with me. Then all my 15 years of anxiety of पैसा story भी कर रहे हैं, पैसा भी कमाना है, वो solve हो जाएगा.
Elite card, the YourStory card or something like that, where maybe you've tied up with 5 hotels or 10 hotels or something. I know some entrepreneurs are trying this. Hampton in the US, there's a company that does this. I know Utsav Samani is doing it with offline in India. You have a card. you already have the brand behind TechSparks. You're like, hey, the card gets you into TechSparks for free. Plus, here are 5 cafes we've tied up with. Here are 5 co-working spaces we've tied up with. You've got benefits. And anyone with the card, you have an app to meet other people with the card. To be honest, that solves the co-founder problem because you get to meet people in private spaces in person. And WeWork and all the other co-working spaces in India don't actually have that, where you can meet other people and you know of them on a platform. And you also meet them at events at TechSparks. That might work as subscription.
Done. I'll do it. Done.
Crazy.
Let's try it. See, kya hoga? What is there to lose?
I think there's a lot to gain. I think
Yeah.
if you want to convert media to subscription, maybe it's not the article itself. Maybe it's not the content piece itself. Maybe that has to be free. But it could be the network. Like you said, you're not a media company. It's a lot more.
Yeah, it's a network. It's an ecosystem. Yeah, and people want to meet people. Increasingly, we want to meet relevant. Like somebody asked me, what is one takeaway you'll give to people who come to TechSparks? I said, effectively network.
That's interesting.
Yeah, you've given me $1 billion idea. From maybe baby corn, I'll become a unicorn.
No, I think it's the brand above all, and this is just like you would have tried it at some point anyway. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Shradha Sharma, and thank you so much for being here. One of the rituals we have on this podcast, because I wanted to give something back. I think people take an hour, 2 hours of somebody else's time, and this is probably exhausting for you, for free, for granted. But we don't do that here. So I have a small gift from you. This is from OnePlus's side. This is the brand new OnePlus Open. This is yours. This is their flagship now.
I'm going to use it at TechSparks.
Yeah, you can use it at TechSpark. So what are you going to do with it?
I am going to tell them that I got it over here, and I'll maybe ask them question, and whoever answers a great question, I'll give them this.
Nice. This is our community phone then.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's a beautiful packaging though. Yeah, it's very nice, no?
Yeah, they've done it well. I
Yeah,
like this. And you like the screen size and stuff. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Shradha Sharma, and I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this gave you like a media masterclass. How do you go 0 to 1 being an entrepreneur in media? How do you stay relevant for 15 years? What are the kind of business models available? How should you find co-founders? How much money do you need? How much money do companies pay you? How to do events? We had it all in this podcast. Thank you so much for being on. Bye.